Hello, I'm back. And this video is called The Crash is Happening and Third-Party Publishers Are the Root Cause of It. Now, I know what some people are going to say. Well, you know, the video game crash, they're either going to say the video game crash has already happened and it just wasn't as bad. No, it's going to get worse, okay? Because let's look back, okay? I had to take a lot of history when I was in school. Or I had to take a certain amount of social studies in order to meet my credit requirements for some of my programs I was in. And one of the things I've found fascinating about history is that history repeats itself. Some of the details may change, but history repeats itself. Generally speaking, history repeats itself. So let's look back at the crash of the 80s, okay? What precipitated the crash, what really precipitated the video game crash of the 80s was a lot of people, was not only Atari with their 5600 and flooding the market with that piece of shit, but also was a lot of third-party developers just putting out games that they, you know, with a brand name on them that they knew people would buy. Not well-made games, just some shit. Now, Atari was not the only console manufacturer back then putting out a garbage product. There were other ones that didn't do nearly as well that people got burned on, okay? Fast forward to now. Microsoft with their Xbox 360, piece of shit, a high failure rate, okay? EA, Activision, a lot of companies putting out games that have to be major fixes have to be done before they're playable. You know, we're seeing it all happen all over again. It's slower because the industry is more spread out now, okay? You have the Japanese video game industry, which, you know, like, here's the thing. Nintendo is built like a rock, okay? If the Western video game industry crashes, Nintendo will be just fine. Now, Square Enix and Capcom might be fucked, but Nintendo will be just fine. So, basically, these companies, like, and I'm going to focus on EA because there's an article in the description field that will perfectly explain why EA is such a bad company. EA, as I said, is focused on putting out, you know, those quick flash in the pan hits that might make people might buy 5, 6, 7 million of them, but the game's a piece of shit. Case in point, SimCity 4, or, you know. Now, I'm gonna be, you know, something you might not know about me. I used to be a heavy PC gamer back in the day, like SimCity, Civilization, Age of Empires. So when I say, you know, not only did I have SimCity on PC, I had SimCity on SNES as well. Major SimCity fan. So when I saw what EA did to the next SimCity, well, I knew SimCity was in trouble when Will Wright left, okay? Like, the guy who created SimCity wasn't involved. I was like, well, this series is going to shit. Because EA now could nudge the creative process to what they wanted, which was an always online DRM fest. And here's the thing, no one fucking pirates SimCity. The people who like SimCity aren't pirating it, they just buy the fucking thing. But EA, like, the industry, rather than deal with the root problem, likes to blame the gamers, you know. Disclaimer, I'm going to get into politics for a little bit. It's kind of like how in Washington, D.C., like, conservatives will blame, you know, the workers, people who are unemployed, the homeless, people who are on government assistance programs, even though the vast majority of them are undereducated, or children. Those are the problems, not the rich assholes at the top who basically take 650% of the pie of the profits. The people at the bottom are the problem. That makes no sense. But whatever. That's EA's thing. They're basically saying, okay, the reason our games aren't selling well is because pirates are stealing. There aren't enough people pirating games to make that type of statement. Maybe if you made a better game, people wouldn't pirate them. For example, Nintendo games aren't really heavily pirated. I mean, I'm sure there's someone who's figured out a way to download Super Mario 3D World onto a disc. But generally speaking, no one's pirating this game. Want to know why? Because it's a quality title and people don't mind buying quality. You know, EA, you basically get what you pay for. Well, you don't get what you pay for. You get, generally speaking, EA comes out with a product, they throw it out the door, it's not even ready, and then they're like, we'll fix it post-patch. Well, that's not really a fine and dandy design philosophy, but it worked during the PC age because different PC builds are different, okay? I have friends who are really into PC building, and they explained it to me in layman's terms because I'm not a heavy PC person. Basically, the reason why patching is such a big thing with PCs is because different PC builds are different. You can, technically speaking, you can have a PC that you custom built yourself that might not have all of the bells and whistles of a gaming rig that was specifically built by a company. And it can be, technically speaking, more powerful and more capable than that gaming rig and not run games nearly as well because those games have been optimized for the second one, not for your stuff. That's just how it is. Well, I mean, and that's why patches are important. They help ease that transition. There is no excuse for a patch to be on a console game. Zero. None. There's no excuse for it. If there is a patch on a console game, it's because you're a lazy ass developer, okay? Because here's the thing. Consoles, okay, there might be differences between consoles. Like the PS2 version of a game would be different from the Xbox version of the game, which would be different from the GameCube version of the game. Or now, the Xbox One version of a game will be different from the PS4 version of a game will be different from the Wii U version of a game. If it's on all platforms, like let's say Lego Marvel. There are differences. The Wii U version uses the gamepad, so you're actually running things, but it's in HD. It's at 720p. 60 frames per second. It's a very good game with very little slowdown. But it's also running things simultaneously on the gamepad. So, I mean, actually, it's higher than 720p, but whatever. But you have that, right? Well, I mean, architecturally speaking, there are differences between, you know, how each of these things are running. The Xbox One has a weaker base architecture than the PS4, which has a stronger base architecture than the Wii U, which uses a power PC, if I remember correctly. Which is like they were doing old school. So if you have someone who knew how to make shit for the Wii, they can make shit for the Wii U. It's not difficult, okay? Now, aside from those architectural differences, really doesn't need to be, you know, this big hullabaloo. You shouldn't need to patch these games. All you need to do is take a team that is familiar with the architecture and say, okay, we know what we're doing, blah, 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 blah. You should not need to patch a console game, okay? You shouldn't. You shouldn't. Not for basic issues like certain developers, Bethesda, and EA and Ubisoft, okay? Ubisoft, which wants to be the European EA, which, if I owned a game development publisher, I would not want to be like EA. Like, I definitely would not want to be like EA because EA is the devil. So, you know, in the article in the description field, we see that the heads of Criterion Games, one of the premier studios of EA, got tired of EA's bullshit and are leaving and forming their own studio. Now, EA has sabotaged their own games on multiple consoles, and not just the Wii U, okay? They sabotaged Battlefield on the Xbox One and the PS4 and PC. The servers are screwy. The game is buggy and glitchy as hell. Like, literally, you cannot tell me that the people who made this game did not know it was going to be like this. But what happened was they were thinking, oh, people will see how fun it is, and they'll give us time to patch it later on. It's starting. The only difference is that now people can patch things, but there's some things that cannot be patched, like bad hardware. Like hardware failures. And it's starting all over again. The crash is coming. And hopefully EA will go down with it. So, I'm going to link the articles in the description field about how EA is one of the vanguards of screwing up this when the next crash comes, and I'll have some more videos coming out today for you. Stay tuned.